365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports. Chuck Cooperstein with us, voice of the Mavericks. And Chuck, have you seen such an emotional up and down within one season for a fan base? Nothing overcomes losing Luka, but then last night, the high of so many people that needed some kind of feel good. What was it like in your opinion?
What a year, man. What 3 months. What a 3 months it's been. And I think you hit it on the head. Look, Luka was special, and he was special to a lot of people in this town. And people are still having a hard time processing the fact that he is not here and will never be coming back to Dallas. But if you are going to have to reboot, this is about as good a way as you could possibly imagine. Now, again, people don't want to reboot because people look at the playoffs this year, they see a wide open playoff, and they see, what could have been had the trade not been made. And of course, all the injuries that came after the trade. Injuries have been a huge part of these playoffs, but it's over, it's done with. And as much as I love watching Luka play, and will always love watching Luka play, I'm really, really excited today to see Cooper Flagg come to town, and the people that I've talked to who, have spent a lot of time around him. They just cannot gush enough about what a terrific kid he is, and what a dynamic talent he is. And, just the idea that he's not even 19 years old yet. I mean, and he's able to do all of these things, and that he's turned heads, among the NBA people when they watched him last summer at USA Basketball, prepping for the Olympics. And just the notion that, he's a different type of player from Luka, and yet there are some things that still he's going to be able to do, maybe not in as flashy a way as Luka did it, but in a way that still is going to be really fun to watch, and hopefully lead the Mavericks on a better path than where they were from February 3rd to last night.
Given the health of the veterans on the roster, the injuries you mentioned, Chuck, do you think that this – I mean, it's probably not a wholesale change on what they plan for the future, but does this maybe open up other avenues where they'll think about what the roster really is around Cooper Flagg now in 2025, 26? Or is that maybe a conversation for let's get Cooper Flagg in, see where this starts to go, and then maybe make changes on the roster?
Well, ultimately, they're going to build around Cooper Flagg. I mean, there's just no getting around that. I mean, he is the future of their team, even as Nico Harrison has spoken of, a shortened timeline because of the presence of Kyrie and Anthony Davis. I mean, really, you're trying to run along parallel tracks. You're trying to win, and at the same time, you're hopefully getting your future of the franchise, the type of end of the pool, deep end of the pool experience that when it is his time to take over, really say 2 or 3 years from now, that he's going to be ready to do that. And I mean, it's an interesting track to walk. But look, there's one thing that they know they need right now, and that is to be able to get another guard in here who can score. With Kyrie out for who knows how long, I mean, I think it would be remarkable if he was back before February 1st. But in the meantime, that's 25 points a game that's not there. And the idea of having someone who can score, have someone who can play with pace, which is what Jason Kidd talked a lot about toward the end of the season, and why he really fell in love with Brandon Williams so much in the month of March. I think that's going to be first and foremost for the Mavericks to solve starting July 1st.
Coop, is there a different set of checks and balances now in regards to the decision-making in the front office based off of just the Luka trade and all that came with that. Like, I know, for example, they get the number 1 pick, and there's a lot of people that are celebrating. They're like, oh, God, we are going to draft Cooper Flagg, aren't we? Like, we're not just going to let somebody – like, there's going to be enough people that say you're drafting Cooper Flagg. But is there, like, a different checks and balances, like I said, sort of in place to ensure that everybody's on the same page and nobody's operating behind the scenes?
I don't know the answer to that, but one would assume, given the fallout over the last 3 months, that the owner would be far more engaged as far as big decisions that come down and signing off on those big decisions and not letting in this case, I think he does want to give the general manager freedom to run the team as he sees fit. But I do think that the lesson learned from the Luka transaction was that Patrick Dumont did not necessarily have a network of people in the NBA that he knew and felt comfortable with. Talking about should I do something like that? Well, now I have to believe that's different. Again, I don't have any inside information on that, right. But it's hard to imagine that, given everything that's happened over the last 3 months and the lifeline that has been thrown them, that they would immediately throw that away and incur the further wrath, if it's possible to have a wrath that's even more intense than it already has been the case, by not keeping him around.
Let's say that they had not made, well, they made the Luka trade, but let's say that it had been accepted a little bit better than it was. Would they then at all have any interest in Giannis? If, in fact, there was enough, collateral on the table to bring him without hurting who they want to be in the first place? I
think it would have been really hard to do that, given what Luka's number is going to be contractually, knowing what Anthony Davis. Well, again, they wouldn't have had Anthony Davis, but you have one guy that's on a supermax, another guy who's going to sign a contract in this offseason that's going to be around $40 million, if not more. Extensions coming for Derek Lively for sure. What would have happened with PJ Washington with an extension that could not be given before August. I think it would have been hard to do. And again, like, if you do that, I mean, you are in the ultimate win now mode, because there's just really no place you can do to really fill out the rest of your team. And as we saw with the Bucks this year, even Giannis was incredible in the playoff series against Indiana, but they had nothing. They had nothing else. And especially after Lillard got hurt, they had nothing else. So hard to say if they would have done that. I tend to doubt it, because it definitely would lead to an almost total loss of financial flexibility.
Chuck, I'm curious on as someone who is especially in the division, the Spurs get the second pick. Obviously, huge rivalry there with the Mavs. They didn't get to see the full season with Wemby this year because of the deep vein thrombosis in his shoulder. But the fact that they're going to have 3 very dynamic, exciting young players, or potentially trade, 2 and 14 for someone like Giannis or Kevin Durant or something. What do you think this means for the Spurs in the Mitch Johnson era? And what do you think about not seeing Greg Popovich over there anymore now, finally?
Well, that's going to be, it was weird last year, because Pop had suffered the stroke right before the Spurs came to Dallas in November, and not seeing him that night was weird. And then, going to San Antonio in March when it had already been announced that he wasn't coming back this season was weird. But the finality of this, and knowing that there's somebody else on that sideline for that's not Greg Popovich is definitely going to be a bit of a jarring sight. The fact that Mitch Johnson got the job makes it perhaps a little less jarring, because he's obviously been there all year long. But look, it's hard not to like San Antonio's position here. With the draft choices, they've got very tradable contracts all over the lot. And if they really feel like they want to make the splash and go after Giannis, I mean, I'm sure that they're capable of putting together a package, and it still might take a third or a fourth team in order to get that done. I think a lot of times when we look at trades, we're just thinking, well, you're just dealing with one team in trying to have that happen, and the way things are with the CBA and the cap, and just how difficult it is to maneuver the money around to make sure that you are not in second apron territory. It makes things a lot more complicated than maybe it would feel like on first blush. But I think San Antonio is they're in a really interesting and a good spot too, and especially if Castle actually ever learns to shoot. He's going to be really, really good. And he's really good right now, but if he ever really learns to shoot, then it's a problem for a lot of people.
So, Coop, how did you take the news in last night? Like, were you watching?
I was watching.
What was your expectation going in, and then just kind of how did the emotions go as you saw, like, oh man, they're going to get top 3. Oh, they're going to get top 2. Oh my God, they're the number 1 pick.
Well, there were no expectations, obviously, because the Mavericks have never moved up in the draft in the lottery, let alone win the lottery. But when that Portland Trailblazer placard turned up at number 11, oh my God, they actually won. They actually moved into the top 4. And at that point, I was more than satisfied, because this draft especially is at least 5 to 6 deep. So they were going to get a high-end player coming into their program. But then as it went along, it's like, okay, Charlotte's 4, Philly's 3. And now it's down to the Mavericks and the Spurs. And the Mavericks have their history. The Spurs have their history in the lottery. I wasn't feeling too good at that point. But when they turned it over, when Mark Tatum opened up the envelope and there was the Spurs logo, I just started screaming. It's like, oh my God, it actually happened. It really, really happened. And the Mavericks are going to get a player that by all, realistic accounts, they had no chance or right to get. But here we are.
How many times were they supposed to be supposed to have the number 1 pick and didn't get it? Do you remember?
Well, in 81, they were number 1 and they got it because there was no lottery back then.
Sure, yeah.
Mark Guire got it. But in the lottery era in 90, in 92 and 93, they had the worst record in the league, and they picked 4th both times. And they wound up taking Jim Jackson and Jamal Mashburn. And then, Jason Kidd in 95, that was the 94 draft. So I think the Mavericks were second that year, and they wound up picking second, and they took Kidd that year. Glenn Robinson was number 1 to Milwaukee, and then Kidd, and then Grant Hill to Detroit. So that's and that's the last time that they really had a chance to be number 1. But I mean, again, I think it was 16 times they were in the lottery, but 7 times they had stayed the same, or 9 times they had stayed the same, 7 times they had actually moved down.
Chuck Cooperstein with us, voice of the Mavericks on 365 Sports. Chuck, anything besides the NBA, why we have you? As far as you got another question, go ahead.
Yeah, Chuck, Paige Beckers and Cooper Flagg all in one fell swoop, huh? How badly did the Mavericks fan base you feel like needed this, and just the city of Dallas? I mean, just some positivity and some extra positivity getting both of those basketball players in Big D.
Oh, I mean, look, I don't know that the Mavericks and Wings fans overlap, but it certainly is interesting that both are here at this time, and if nothing else, basketball is on the map in Dallas for all year round. It's a 12-month sport now, and that's great. And as far as the fan base is concerned, there are some fans who we say, look, they'll never get over what happened on February 2nd. They'll just never get over it and never allow themselves to enjoy the possibility of loving this kid the way they love Dirk and the way they love Luka. And to each their own, but I think that's a shame that they would take that attitude. But I'm the happiest for the people on the business side of the Mavericks office, and especially the ticket sellers and the sales people, the marketing people. the sponsorship people,
Yeah.
who David, this. I mean, this has been your life for a long time. You get on the phone and say, hey, how about being a sponsor of the Mavericks, or in your case, a sponsor, at your radio station in Tyler or 365, and they immediately hang up on you, right? They don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was a lot worse than that, because the fans were just all over these kids who were doing nothing more than doing their job, and that was not a very good look at all. And now these kids can pick up the phone this morning and they can make their calls.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Maybe they get hung up on, but I think a lot more people are willing to take that call today.
It's a great analogy. Yeah, great point. Yeah,
I can't imagine what it's like. Like, don't hang up. Don't, I know. Don't hang up. Please just see it through. Chuck, what do you think about the lottery in the form it is now? I mean, obviously, every year somebody thinks it's rigged. It becomes a cross. Has it done enough to stop tanking? Because teams still do tank to get more ping pong balls. Maybe not to the level they would if there was no lottery, but do you think it's effective?
I think the flattening of the odds has helped. I think the addition of the play-in has helped even more, because it has forced teams to have to play all the way to the finish. And certainly in the West this year, we didn't know who was finishing, 5, 6, 7, and 8, who was going to be in that top 6 and not have to play in the play-in, as opposed to the other teams that did until the very end of the season. So from that standpoint, I think it's great. You have teams like Toronto that tried to lose games when they were playing with their regulars, and then they'd have a lead in the fourth quarter and then they'd sit them down. And teams like that do not deserve anything good, as far as I'm concerned. A team like Utah, and especially the last 2 years, not necessarily this year, but the last 2 years, they were pretty competitive through the first 45 to 50 games of the year. And Danny Ainge pulled the plug on them and basically said, we can't win. We're winning too many games. And people like that don't deserve good things. I'm sorry. So I don't feel for Utah at all. Maybe Charlotte to a lesser degree, but I think there's the point. I think that's been made here really since this all started in 2019, when the Pelicans moved up from 8 to 1 to get Zion, is that tanking doesn't pay. It simply doesn't pay. Yeah, you get 14.3% opportunity. The top 3 teams do. But what does that mean? That means 85.7% of the odds are against you getting the number 1 pick, or even getting one of the top 3 picks in the draft. So, to me, the lesson learned here is go play. Just go play the games, and whatever happens, it winds up happening.
I don't remember, do you, where it was an obvious NFL team that was losing on purpose? I don't know if they've ever been through that before. You just have teams that are bad.
Yeah, but I think there have been a couple of teams late in the season that were sitting some people.
Yeah.
And but football's so different because there's so many more people. There's, as Parcells would always tell us, there's so many damn moving parts I'm trying to keep track of. I'm up to my ass in alligator,
Yeah.
And that's it. So basketball is different, and that's why I think why people pay so much attention to it, because literally one player, the right player, can change the fortunes of an entire franchise.
There is some liberal use of some teams on the IR late in the year in the NFL. That's for sure. Chuck, just an overall NBA question. It just came down from the Celtics. Jason Tatum had Achilles surgery this morning, his right Achilles. That was rough to watch last night, especially from a young and exciting player like him who just got that first title. Just a dent for the league for the next year or so because he's gone.
Every Achilles injury is hard to watch because there's no contact that's involved with it. And, we've just seen way too many of them this year. And, I don't know if that's a function of the nature of the game, of the way the NBA game is played right now, or just something structural in those individual people that that puts so much pressure on them that they can't, that their Achilles ultimately gives out on them. But it's just a humongous blow to the Celtics. Obviously, not just in this series, but going through next year and knowing that they're paying a player that's not going to be on the floor. I mean, he's not going to be on the floor for an entire year next year, and he's making $60 million or whatever it is, and you got to find a way to overcome that, and that's really, really hard to do, and it is a shame because these playoffs have been amazing. They really are. I mean, the games are weird. There have been, especially in this round. I mean, there have been a lot of Mike Tyson knockouts in this round. But overall, the competitiveness level of the 8 teams remaining, people always seem to complain that, and the NBA is scripted out. We know who's going to win, who's going to get to the finals at the end of the year. I mean, do you know who's getting to the finals right now? Because I sure as hell don't.
I don't.
It's a great thing for the league. It's super exciting. And I think, I'm not one of those who spends a whole lot of time looking at television ratings and things like that, but I have read where the ratings are way up for the playoffs this year. And I think that's a pretty good reason why.
To wrap it up with this, Chuck, thanks for your time. I couldn't think of 2 people I'd rather have on today than you and Fran Fraschilla, who I recorded an interview with earlier today, and he said you both talked, I think, last night about what Cooper Flagg, his game, and what he brings to the table. We've talked about that they got him or he's next, whatever, but the kind of game he seems to do almost everything very well.
He's a chameleon. Whatever you need him to do, he can do. He can handle the ball. He can initiate offense. He rebounds it. He can shoot it. His shooting obviously improved tremendously as the year went on. He was a 43% three-point shooter in ACC play. He's incredibly competitive. I mean, he will guard anyone, and he what not just Fran, but some others that I've talked to today have told me about him is that his capacity to learn and to retain is remarkable and really has been the case since he was, say, 14 years old or 13 years old. And in some ways, I mean, that is like Doncic, not that, again, Cooper Flagg wasn't playing on the professional level. He wasn't playing against men the way that Doncic was over in Europe. But I kind of look I've watched him. I watched him several times during the year. I mean, I didn't see every game he played, but I watched a lot of his games. And, there's a little Luka in his game without the flashiness, but just the ability to have that hostage dribble and get you on your hip, and then you're in jail. You're done. He's either shooting the floater and making it, or you're coming up as the center to play him, and he's throwing over the top, and Liva's going to dunk it in. But there's a little Larry Bird in his confidence level in how he plays with. And there's a little bit of LeBron too in just how he processes things. And, I don't know that he'll be any of those players, but I do think the Mavericks have a player that I think his style of play is going to allow people to fall in love with him and just carry on in a new age of Dallas Mavericks basketball. I think it's just a really exciting time. I just know that a guy that is as smart as Cooper Flagg is and how he processes things, at least, again, the way that I'm told that he does, and having someone like Jason Kidd, who really is a basketball savant, I have a feeling they're going to get along swimmingly.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it, Coop. Chuck
Thanks
Cooperstein,
for having me, guys. Take care.
Voice of the Mavericks, with us on many things from the NBA lottery. And I'll be honest with you, had even the Spurs won, I'll say this, if the Spurs had won the number 1 pick, we would have mentioned it maybe during Off the Radar, but I don't know if we would have had like the analyst on early on in the show. But I'm glad we're having Coop, and then later on with Fran Fraschilla. And maybe because of what the Mavericks took a kick in earlier in the year.
Nuts. You practically said it.
Those 2 little things, yes. And
well, speak for yourself.